All right, guys, welcome to another episode. I realized in the first episode I didn't introduce Mark until the very end. This is my brother Mark. He's gonna be sitting in on most of these with me. Today we're gonna talk about. We don't really have winter in Georgia, I guess, but we're gonna talk about what we see in the car business whenever we have cold weather, especially anything under like 30 degrees.
Especially that.
Of course, the normal stuff with the batteries and the cooling systems and all that stuff. But
They need their heat.
man, we worked on a lot of heat this last couple weeks, haven't we?
A lot of heat.
Yeah, you let it get cold, people don't play with that heat.
Mm-mm.
It's like the air conditioner. The first time it gets 100 degrees, man, they roll in, don't they? You talk a little bit. What do you think about? What's probably the biggest thing other than heat that we deal with during this time?
Tire pressure sensors with the weather changing. That is a big deal. Every time it goes from hot to cold or cold to hot, it's a chain of reactions.
Yeah. Batteries.
Radiators busting, coolant hoses fraying off, and slow coolant leaks, and once they get a gallon low, the heater's not going to work.
We had one yesterday. It was a diesel that was, I guess, had a little bit of water in it. Maybe got frozen and started having a coolant or a fuel leak. You know, so with diesels, you see that because diesel fuel has water in it.
Yep.
That's why you have water separators and all on a diesel that you don't have on a gas burner.
And most of it works.
Crazy story. I was driving by a gas station here in town one day, and they had a water hose run out the building. Remember? They had the water hose run from the building all the way out to the gas tank, in the gas tank, putting water in. And I was like, man, what in the... I turned around, I was like, this can't be right, So not only is there crooked stuff going on, repairing stuff, but some of these gas station owners are pumping water in their diesel fuel to help sell more diesel because your diesel truck will naturally separate the water from the fuel, and it don't really hurt it, I guess. Just makes you not get as much fuel as you're paying for.
Yeah, for sure.
That's pretty... that happened here in town. I seen it with my own two eyes. I couldn't believe it. We see problems sometimes with water and fuel from Sam's gas stations. I don't know.
Sam's, Walmart.
Yeah, I don't know why we see it. I don't know if, especially like older gas tanks. I think they've mostly fixed most of that with the newer style gas tanks, so they don't leak as much water in them. But
that's why I only stop at the truck stop.
Truck stop, you can't.
They go through it so many times,
and
they get refilled so many times. It's mostly fresh.
Well, and two, like another thing that it's weird about, you don't think about here because with cold weather stuff is washer fluid.
Yeah.
When we have customers, we've had a couple military families that's moved to Alaska, and they have to buy cold weather washer fluid. You don't think about that in Georgia, Your washer fluid does have a protectant in it that keeps it from freezing. So when we mix up washer fluid, we top off washer fluid every time we do oil change. And most places do, but if they don't put enough washer solvent in it, or they're buying pre-mixed, we mix our own because I don't like the way it's...
If you dilute it too much, it's going to freeze up.
It's going to freeze up and bust the tank.
Bust the lines, bust the nozzles.
Yeah, everything. So
because all that stuff's rubber.
And we take it for granted because it don't normally get that cold here. But, man, you let it get 20 degrees here, man, these people freak out, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
No starts, batteries, naturally a normal battery has water in it. All the batteries that have a removable top have water in it. And that's what activates the acid and all that's in the battery with the platelets, and it keeps it wet so that stuff stays together. And as that water dries or freezes, or gets low, that stuff falls off the plate inside the battery, and the battery has a dead cell.
Yep. That's probably the biggest thing why they started putting AGMs in the newer stuff.
Yep, the AGM battery is, if you're not familiar with that, AGM is a gel instead of water.
Yep.
That's why they don't have, they're maintenance free, they call them. Makes them go way up in price.
Yep.
A dang used to buy a battery for any car for $100. You know, now some of these AGM batteries are $400.
Yep.
I know one of the especially the hybrids, like especially hybrids and anything that does auto stop. You know, the auto stop, they started putting that little small
battery.
Looks like a motorcycle battery in the back of them.
And you remember that Mercedes? It had 3 batteries.
Had 3 batteries in it. Yeah,
it had one in the trunk, one under the hood, and then actually 2 in the trunk.
Yep, 2 in the trunk. One is merely for starting the car. 2 is for running all the modules we talked about in the first podcast. Some of these cars have 80-something modules. That's why it has an extra battery. And then you got the 3rd battery for auto stop, and then it helps with some other stuff, you know, too. But that one Jeep we had that needed the rear battery, the customer jumped it off. That's one thing that I encourage people not to do with these newer vehicles, especially now with it getting cold and the batteries are going dead. And, you know, please don't jump them off with another car. You know, they did that with this 2020 Jeep, and it voltage spiked and it ruined the rear battery. And that rear battery was like $600.
Yep.
So, I tell people don't jump them off at all. If you do use a jump box, we use a jump box. You have to be careful with some of the car chargers, especially if you don't know what kind of battery it is. There is a different car charger for an AGM battery and a regular battery. And if you try to charge an AGM battery with a regular car charger, it could potentially, I'm not going to say it's going to damage it every time, but the possibility of it damaging is there, or they wouldn't make a different charger for them.
They definitely charge different.
They charge
just like our automatic car charger.
Yep.
You got to flip it.
You got to flip it to AGM.
Before you even turn it on.
It asks you before it even cuts on which battery you got. You got to tell it. So
there's a reason for it.
Cooling systems. You know, you got, man, these different manufacturers put what you got: blue, green, orange, red, pink,
purple.
RV cooling is different, you know, and then you got the whole aspect of, you know, what do you do when your car's leaking coolant? You know, you top it off. What do you top it off with?
Yeah.
Do you use 50-50? Do you put water in it? Do you use concentrate? You know, there's a lot of things.
And it also depends on how low it is.
Depends on how low it is. I had that Jeep you looked at the other day. I don't know why we keep talking about Jeeps today, but you looked at the other day that they were complaining about the heat not working, but it was a gallon low on water or coolant, and it had a coolant leak. That was the reason why the heat wasn't working, because it was cool. The Fords are real bad about it. You know, them Fords. If you got a Ford F-150 and the fan is screaming, like
even a newer GMC,
some of the newer GMCs sounds like it's a jet plane about to take off.
Yeah,
you can just about bet it's low on coolant.
Yeah, or it needs a thermostat.
One of the two.
The GM trucks are real bad about that.
Yep.
We done what, 2 of them?
Yep, PO128s.
Yep.
They're pretty sensitive. And basically what they're looking for when that happens is there is 2 different mappings of fuel management. So when you first crank your car up in the morning, especially when it's cold, it's going to be in what is called open loop.
Yep.
It's going to have a set formula of, this is what I want the fuel ratio to be, this is what I'm going to do here. So when you crank that up, it gives you a time limit, you know, of how fast it wants to get to operating temperature, or above. Probably most of them are 150 or 60 degrees, I guess.
Yeah.
And it wants to see that in a certain time period. And if it doesn't do that, then it turns the light on.
And that's another thing we're seeing a lot of with it being colder weather. Yep. It's taking longer. To get there. So
the thermostat's maybe sticking a little bit. Yep. You know, we had that Lexus that the thermostat was lazy on. It worked, and the heat worked. It just took it longer than it expected to do it, because once it gets the operating temperature, it's going to look at your O2 sensors and your mass airflow and all your different inputs to determine what the fuel management should be then.
Yep, because PCM takes care of all that.
PCM takes care of all of it. So, you know, that's one of those things that you don't really think about. You know, people, you know, unless your heat doesn't work, you know, or there's a reason behind it, you don't really know, the fan's screaming or whatever the case may be. One thing that we've been seeing a lot of that I don't necessarily like, and a lot of manufacturers are doing this, is if they do have a problem with the cooling system, say you have a coolant leak or whatever, and it's cold and it doesn't take enough time to get up the temperature or whatever, some error happens, it'll put the gauge all the way at zero.
yeah.
So if your vehicle is low on coolant and the engine's overheating, you don't know it, right? We had to put an engine in that one girl's car. She's like, her mom was mad. Why would this happen? And in her defense, the coolant gauge was all the way down at zero, so she didn't know it was running hot.
Yep.
And
a lot of the cars have two different gauges, one for the actual cluster that they can actually see and one for the computer.
Yeah, well, two sensors basically. Yeah. One that tells the computer what the coolant temp is, and if them two aren't on the same page, it sets a light or sets a code. The check engine light will come on. And there again, a lot of manufacturers will drop that gauge to zero, which I don't agree with. I think if you're going to make the gauge do anything, make it go all the way to hot.
All the way to hot, yep.
So then people are like, oh, man, that's all the way to hot. I got to cut this thing off,
Yep.
But more and more times, especially with the newer ones, they're dropping them gauges to zero. And it's just part of what it is. It's going to be another obstacle people's going to have to do away with or think about consciously because they're not going to know,
Yep. Pay attention to your check engine light. There's a
and
reason why it's
that's
on.
part of why we're doing this podcast, because I'm gonna say this. People are ignorant, and people's gonna think, "Oh, you're making fun of people," or you said somebody was ignorant. Ignorance is not a bad thing. Ignorance is you don't know. I'm ignorant in some stuff. I just don't know.
For sure.
And I'll tell you in a minute. Man, I don't know. People had a lady get mad at me because I told her I don't know what that. Well, what do you mean you don't know? You're the expert. Well, I'm not Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. If I knew everything, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah,
for sure. So, we're trying to educate people on what to look for.
Yeah.
Everybody knows if they get out there, there's a spot on the driveway. If there's water running out of it, of course you shut it off and figure out what's going on. But what about if you drive a F-150 with an EcoBoost and the coolant lines are leaking
And
on the
it's burning off
turbo?
the exhaust.
It's so hot. The turbo is right there, and it's 2,000 degrees. So every time the coolant hits it, it just evaporates.
Burns it off.
And it's a bad design because they put a metal line in between the turbo and the engine with two little fittings, and it wears them fittings out because there's no flex.
Yeah.
I don't know why somebody ain't come out with steel braided lines to fix
You
these
ain't lying.
things, because we do a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And every time you do one, you got to pull the turbos off, and
To do
it's
them right, yeah.
$1,500 or whatever to replace these little bitty,
Quick
$6 quick disconnects.
Yep.
But that's why we see a lot of these Fords with the fans wide open. I think is because that coolant, it's not going to hit the ground.
Yeah.
It just evaporates. And when we get them, we look at the turbo and it's covered in white stuff because we're like, oh yeah, this thing must be leaking coolant.
Yep.
Another thing. What are some other things we see? Batteries, coolants. The Jeeps are bad about the engine oil cooler with the oil filter adapters, plastic. They
Leaking.
bust all the time.
Yeah.
I don't
Too
think
much.
that's really got anything to do with the cold weather. I think that's just bad design.
I think it is bad design, yeah.
Just a flaw.
Because we see it in the summertime, too.
Don't make them aftermarket at all. You got to these cars, Audi, Volkswagen, Mercedes, all these BMW. I don't know why they think that they got to put everything on the cooling system plastic. Why is that? Why is that? I mean, we started with the radiators having the side tanks that are plastic.
Yeah.
They bust all the time.
Especially if you go out and buy a brand new Mercedes and you open the hood and most of it's plastic, you're like, this is most people look at a Mercedes or, a BMW as a higher end car.
Well, and yeah, you're paying for it.
You're definitely paying for it, for sure.
I just don't think that my opinion again, okay, we talked about this based on 30 years of experience. Them cars aren't made to drive 100,000 miles.
No.
It's like buying a Corvette and driving a Corvette 150. We seen a guy that had a Corvette. What that black one have on it? 300,000 miles?
Yeah.
Like, man, you don't drive these cars that far. They're not meant to drive. They're sports car. Audis and some of these cars, they're sports cars. They're not meant to be driven every day. And yet,
I hate to say it, though. If I had a Corvette, I'd drive it I'd probably put some miles on it.
I got one, and I don't drive it, but I mean, I do like driving on the weekends.
Yeah.
A lot of the things we get, questions we get asked when you going back to the coolant, is coolant flushes. I'm not a big proprietor on coolant flushes. I think there are applications where a cooling flush is necessary. Okay. When I worked for GM, we had a bad problem with like 96 to like 2000 model Chevrolets, especially the Blazers and the S10s and the full size Chevys with the 5.7 in them.
Yep.
For some reason, they use Dexcool, which is the orange coolant that GM's used since 1996. They've used that same coolant.
Yeah.
For some reason, in some of them years' cars, before they went to the LS platform, I mean, you pull the cap off, it looks like it's got clay inside of it. Whatever reaction was going on with the coolant and the type of components that was in the coolant system, it just made it turn into just nastiness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. Flush them out. Flush them. Not necessarily with a flush machine, but we like to use a water hose and let the engine run and let the car do its thing. But once they went to the LS platform, that kind of went away,
Kind of. We still see it every now and then with some that have like 150,000 miles on them that never had a coolant change.
Yeah, never. And usually the coolant, usually in most cars, you're going to have a radiator hose or something that's going to bust because everything's freaking plastic.
Yeah.
That you're going to change that coolant before you get to that point, I think at 100,000 miles, if you haven't had anything done, drain that coolant out and put some new in it.
Yeah.
That's probably not a bad advocate or a bad, thing. That's not a waste of money.
Yeah, definitely not a waste of money.
Like some of this other stuff, and, they got additives and all this stuff that they put in them.
I think that's just adding to the mess.
It's like fuel booster,
Yeah.
Yeah, does it work? Yeah.
Maybe.
But is it worth it? No. Do I put it in mine? Heck no.
No. I don't put anything in mine with diesel fuel.
I can't really say anything about coolant because I don't drive a car 100,000 miles anyway, usually.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the one to ask.
And that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. And we talked about the newer Chevrolet trucks with the transmissions going bad at them early. There's a reason in every owner's manual at 20,000 miles, change your air filter. 50,000 miles. If people pay more attention to that, I think we would stop seeing the earlier breakdowns.
Well, and that's where we got to get better too, as an industry. We got to get better because I'm not a big advocate of upselling on people. So I hate calling somebody and say, "Hey, your car's here. It's due for this maintenance or that maintenance." Everybody knows to change their oil.
Well,
nobody hardly ever changed transmission fluid.
Yeah.
So we need to do better about telling them, "Hey, you need to change your oil, your transmission fluid."
Yeah. Or, hey, your car's got 100,000 miles on it. What have you had done to it?
Yeah,
here's where it needs.
People call us all the time. Well, I got a guy call yesterday. He's like, "Hey, I got a Duramax with 150,000 miles on it. What maintenance do you recommend?" Well, I've never seen that car.
Everything.
I mean, have you done maintenance at 50? Have you done maintenance at 100? Have you done
75,000?
Have you done any of the other maintenance, or have you never done anything to this thing?
Yep.
Because after about 150,000 miles, I'm gonna tell you, don't change the transmission fluid.
Nope.
Because you're flirting with disaster.
Yeah. It might not be able to back off our ride.
I've seen them at the dealership. We pull them in and they'll do a flush on them and they can't back them out of the stall.
Because it burns the transmission up.
Yeah, it just takes all. It's like giving blood. You don't go to the blood bank and say, "Hey, take all my blood out."
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a topic for another podcast too. We'll do a whole podcast on transmission stuff.
Yeah,
I think
that's easy.
But with that, what else? Cold weather stuff, washer fluid. We talked about coolant, batteries. That's probably biggest thing. Tire pressure. Some of these tire pressure sensors are really finicky. The DOT. What's the federal term for the Department of Transportation has decided that by law every car that is made after I think 20 or 21 maybe, it's mandatory that they have to have tire pressure sensors in them.
Yeah.
They even got tire pressure sensors. When I bought the new electric Hummer, there were 4 tire pressure sensors in the glove box. I'm like, what are these for?
For the trailer.
For the trailer. You can put it
Yeah.
on the trailer and sync the trailer tire pressure sensors to the which is important because
it is
how
important.
many times you get in a trailer and the dang tires are flat?
Yep.
You know, you don't pull a trailer every day. So that's some of the cool stuff that is technology. It's got flaws.
Yeah.
You're gonna see that dang light on. You know, that's the whole ploy with the nitrogen. I'll talk about that for just a second, but I don't agree with the nitrogen. I think it's expensive. I think it's a waste of money. Does it do what they tell you it does? It keeps the tire pressures maintained. It gives you better fuel mileage. Helps your tire life last longer. Yes, it does all of them things. But so does keeping the right amount of air in it.
Yeah.
You know, nitrogen does deplete. It doesn't go up and down like oxygen does. You know, when we put air in a tire, it gets hot, it'll go up 4 or 5 pounds.
4 or 5 pounds, yeah.
Nitrogen doesn't do that, but it does over time deplete, and you're slow anyway.
Yep.
So what did you accomplish? You know, you paid $50 or $60, whatever it is, to put nitrogen in your tires, and you still got a low tire. You know, and then you got to go back to whoever has the machine to put more nitrogen in.
Yep.
You're not supposed to put air in there. So what I do when I buy a car,
Usually deflate all that.
Deflate all 4 tires.
Take
and
all
put
the
regular-
green caps off of it, put black caps on them.
Put regular air in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that's another topic for another podcast. We'll do that. But we just want to jump on here today and touch base with a couple, cold weather tips for everybody out there. You know, the biggest thing is if you don't know, just call us and ask. You know, we'll put the number on the screen down at the bottom, and you can call here and ask, and be glad to tell you. You know, hey, should I jump my car off, or should I not jump my car off, or should I put coolant in it, or should I put water in it, or hey, should I mess with this battery, or should I not mess with this battery?
Yeah. And it might sound like a dumb question, but dumb questions are really important.
I'd rather have a
nowadays.
dumb question than be telling somebody, hey, you need an engine because you put water in your truck instead of coolant, and you've been driving it and got 30 degrees and cracked the block.
Yep.
So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news when it comes to that over something stupid, or hey, you need an engine because you run it hot because the gauge don't work because it was low on coolant, So, but thanks again. We're going to do a couple of these, probably do about 10 of these pretty fast. And then we'll get to a schedule where we'll do maybe one a week or whatever the case may be. But thank you guys again for your time. Thanks, Mark, for hanging out. And, y'all tune in. We got it on Facebook, YouTube page. Subscribe, like. If there's anything y'all want to see, let us know. We appreciate y'all having interest in this for one. And
It's definitely different for us.
well, yeah, I mean, we fix cars, and, so we talk about cars all the time. We just never recorded it. I didn't realize people would be interested in hearing that, especially listen to me talk for 10 or 15 minutes. I still ain't figured that out yet. So,
Yeah.
but thanks you guys for your time, and tune in next time. If y'all want to hear anything special, just send us a message or call us. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll see if we can work on that for them.
All right.
Thanks.